Janet Gilbert had always been the kind of woman who believed in happily ever after. She was strong, accomplished, and confident, one of those rare souls who managed to balance success with kindness. Her friends admired her, her colleagues respected her, and in the quiet hours of the night, she took comfort in knowing she had someone waiting to share her dreams with. That someone was Marcus, the man she believed was her forever. For years she had woven her life around him. She pictured a home filled with laughter, children running through the halls, and the kind of love stories she read about in novels. But all of it came crashing down one afternoon, when her phone buzzed with a message from a mutual friend, a message that sliced her heart open with a single line. "Did you know Marcus is getting married next weekend?" At first she thought it had to be a mistake. She read the words again, her hands trembling so hard she nearly dropped her phone. Marcus, getting married to someone else? The days that followed blurred into a haze of disbelief and devastation. She confronted him, hoping, praying that the truth would be kinder. But it wasn't. Marcus looked at her with an emptiness she had never seen in his eyes before, and said the words that would echo in her chest for nights on end. "I've moved on, Janet, it's over between us." She felt like the ground had been pulled from beneath her feet. Every promise, every whispered vow, every tender moment they had shared, it all shattered into dust. The world she had so carefully built around him was nothing but ruins. On the morning of the wedding week, rain poured heavily in the city. As though the sky wept on her behalf, Janet left her apartment without an umbrella, barely caring as the cold drops soaked through her clothes. Her heels splashed against puddles as she walked aimlessly through the streets, her chest tightening with every step. She told herself she was only going for a walk, only trying to breathe, but deep inside, she knew where her feet wanted to take her, toward Marcus, toward closure, or maybe toward madness. It was then that it happened. A sleek black car sped past, wheels cutting through a wide puddle, sending a wave of dirty rainwater splashing over her from head to toe. She gasped, stumbling back, drenched, humiliated, shivering. The car didn't stop. It didn't even slow down. She caught a glimpse of the tinted windows and the glint of luxury, and anger flared through her chest. "Unbelievable," she hissed, brushing at her soaked blazer. It was the last thing she needed, on top of heartbreak, betrayal, and misery. She now looked like a drowned fool in the middle of the street. By the time she reached the wedding venue later that day, an elegant hotel where preparations were already in full swing, her clothes were changed, but her pride was still in tatters. She told herself she shouldn't be there, that she had no right to interfere. But her heart refused to listen. She needed to see him, to see the woman who was taking everything she once dreamed of. She needed to know if Marcus had truly moved on, or if there was still a sliver of the man who once swore he loved her. She slipped inside, her heels clicking softly on the marble floors. Flowers lined the halls, white roses and lilies, the scent of them clinging to the air like a cruel reminder of purity and promises. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of a love being celebrated, while hers lay broken at her feet. And then she saw him. Marcus, standing at the far end of the room, laughing with guests, looking every bit the groom he had chosen to become. Janet's chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to breathe, when a voice cut through her storm. Funny how heartbreak has a way of making people show up where they don't belong. She turned sharply, her eyes colliding with a tall, broad-shouldered man leaning casually against a pillar. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, his presence commanding without effort. Dark eyes gleamed with mischief. His lips curved into a knowing smirk. It was him, the man who had splashed her earlier. "You," she said, her voice sharp. "You're the one who couldn't bother to stop after drenching me on the street." He tilted his head, unfazed. "Oh, that was you? I thought I saw a very angry woman flailing in my rearview mirror." Her cheeks burned with fury. "You think that's funny?" "I think it's memorable," he replied smoothly. "And now here we are again. Fate has a strange sense of humor, don't you think?" Janet folded her arms, trying to mask the tremble in her chest. She should have walked away, ignored him. But there was something about the man's confidence that held her in place. Dangerous, magnetic, he wasn't just anyone. She knew his face, his reputation. Adrian Hart, billionaire, business tycoon, charmer with a reputation as dark as the suit he wore. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone clipped. Want? He chuckled, stepping closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I don't want anything yet, but I couldn't help noticing the way you were staring at the groom. Longing, heartbreak, fury. It's written all over you. You came here for him. Her breath hitched. You don't know anything about me. On the contrary, Adrian said, his gaze piercing into hers. I know exactly what you're doing here. You want to stop this wedding. Janet's heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, caught in his snare. Why would you care? She finally managed. Adrian's smirk deepened, his eyes darkening with something unreadable. Because I enjoy watching chaos unfold, and because I might be the only one who can help you do it. The words sent a chill down her spine. She didn't trust him, not even a little. Everything about Adrian screamed danger. And yet, as she glanced back at Marcus, at the life that was slipping from her grasp, desperation clawed at her chest. Janet knew she was standing at the edge of something she couldn't yet name. She could walk away, leave Adrian and his wicked smile behind, and accept her heartbreak. Or she could listen, just for a moment, to the man whose car had splashed her, whose words were sharp enough to cut, and whose presence made her pulse race in ways she didn't understand. Adrian leaned closer, his voice a velvet whisper that curled around her heart. Think about it, Janet Gilbert. 3 favors. That's all I'll ask for. In exchange, I'll give you what you want most. She stared at him, caught between fury and intrigue, her world already tilting on its axis. And deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of something she might never be able to control. Janet had never believed in deals with the devil. But as she stood in the dimly lit corridor of the hotel, staring into Adrian Hart's eyes, she realized she was on the verge of making one. The music from the ballroom drifted faintly around them, laughter and celebration echoing through the air. Yet she felt trapped in an entirely different world where her heart's desperation might bind her to a man she shouldn't even be speaking to. 3 favors, Adrian repeated smoothly, his voice calm, deliberate, as though he were discussing a business contract and not her broken heart. No questions asked. When I call on you, you'll do as I say. In exchange, I'll give you a chance to rewrite the ending to your little fairy tale. Janet's chest tightened, anger flaring through her confusion. You think this is some kind of game? My life isn't a story for your amusement. Adrian's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. Everything is a game. Janet, some people just don't know they're playing until they lose. The arrogance in his tone should have pushed her away. She should have turned on her heel and walked out, sparing herself the trouble. But then her eyes flicked back to the ballroom, to Marcus laughing with his bride-to-be, completely at peace as if Janet had never existed. The pain stabbed her chest like a knife. She wanted closure. She wanted answers. And if Adrian truly could give her that, maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. Her voice trembled, though she tried to keep it steady. And what exactly would you do to help me? Adrian stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with the floral air of the venue. That depends. Sometimes the best way to stop something is not to scream and beg. Sometimes it's to turn the table entirely. I can give you access, opportunities. I can make him notice you again. For I can make him regret the day he let you go. Janet's heart pounded, torn between fear and temptation. His words held a dark allure, like a door she knew she shouldn't open, but couldn't stop reaching for. And all you want are favors? She asked carefully. He nodded once. 3. You don't get to choose when. You don't get to choose where. But you will say yes, always. Her breath caught. And what if I say no? Adrian chuckled softly, his eyes glittering. Then you walk out of here, and Marcus marries her tomorrow without ever knowing you came. Life goes on. You keep wondering what could have been, and he moves on happily ever after with someone else. Simple, isn't it? It wasn't simple. Nothing about this man or this moment was simple. But the desperation inside her refused to quiet down. Janet could almost feel herself slipping, caught between pride and longing. Finally she whispered, "Fine, I'll do it." The smirk on Adrian's face widened, satisfied. He extended his hand not for a handshake, but as if sealing an invisible contract. Janet hesitated, then placed her trembling hand in his. The moment their skin touched, an odd shiver ran through her. something unsettling and electric. "Good girl," he murmured. "Now let's begin." Janet thought Adrian might mean in a day or two, that he'd wait until the dust of the wedding settled before making her fulfill her first favor. But she was wrong. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave, Adrian appeared again, his sharp gaze pinning her in place. "Favor one," he announced smoothly as if ordering a drink. She blinked. "Now?" "Now." He slipped a black card into her hand, the kind of invitation money and influence couldn't easily buy. "You're coming with me tonight." Before she could argue, he turned and walked toward the exit, leaving her with no choice but to follow. The gala was nothing like the wedding. Held in a towering glass skyscraper downtown, it was a glittering affair filled with the city's elite, politicians, business magnates, celebrities. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and conversations buzzed with power. Janet felt out of place the moment she stepped inside, though her elegant dress gave her a fighting chance at blending in. Adrian, however, commanded the room effortlessly. People parted for him as though the world itself bent to his presence. Whispers followed him, admiration mixed with fear. Janet trailed beside him, her arm hooked through his as he introduced her, deliberately, she realized as his date. Heat flushed her cheeks each time he said it. She wanted to correct him, to insist this wasn't real. But every time her eyes met his, he silenced her with nothing more than a look. "Why bring me here?" she whispered, as they paused near the bar. "Because perception is power," Adrian replied without missing a beat. "And tonight people will see you differently. Not as the woman scorned, not as someone left behind, but as someone standing beside me. Trust me, Janet, that carries more weight than you think." She bristled. "So I'm just a pawn in your little game?" His gaze dropped to her lips, then lifted back to her eyes, steady and unreadable. "No, Janet, you're not a pawn. You're the piece that changes the board." His words unsettled her. She didn't want to feel anything in that moment, not for him, not for anyone. But a spark flickered inside her chest all the same, betraying her resolve. The night stretched on, filled with introductions, toasts, and laughter she didn't quite feel part of. Yet strangely, she caught herself smiling more than once. Adrian had a way of commanding attention, of making her feel seen even when surrounded by strangers. He leaned in when he spoke to her, as though no one else mattered. And though she reminded herself of his reputation, she couldn't deny the pull. By the end of the gala, Janet was exhausted, her emotions raw. As they stepped out into the cool night air, Adrian turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You did well tonight," he said softly. "Better than I expected." Janet folded her arms, weary but defiant. "I'm not here to impress you." "No," he agreed, his lips curling into a slow smile. "But you did anyway." The word sent a strange warmth through her, though she quickly buried it. "That's one favor down," she said firmly. "Two left." Adrian's gaze lingered on her a moment longer, something dark and unspoken flickering in his eyes. "Careful, Janet. You might find that favors are only the beginning." Her breath caught, a nervous flutter stirring in her chest. She turned away, unwilling to let him see the effect he had on her. But deep inside she knew it was already too late. That night, as she lay awake in her apartment, replaying the evening in her mind, Janet realized something terrifying. For the first time since Marcus broke her heart, she hadn't spent the night crying over him. Instead, she had spent it thinking about Adrian Hart. His voice, his eyes, his presence that lingered like smoke she couldn't escape. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Janet woke to a new kind of silence the next morning. It wasn't the suffocating emptiness that had haunted her since Marcus shattered her heart. It was something different, something unsettling. Instead of crying herself awake, she found her thoughts tangled with Adrian Hart. The way he'd watched her at the gala, the quiet intensity in his voice when he said she wasn't a pawn but the piece that could change the board, infuriated her that she remembered his words so vividly, infuriated her more that her body still tingled when she recalled the warmth of his hand over hers as he led her through a room full of people who would have gladly eaten her alive. Adrian wasn't safe. He was dangerous, unpredictable. And yet he was also the only one who made her feel as if Marcus's betrayal didn't define her anymore. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to reality. The message on her screen made her stomach flip. Adrian Hart, favor 2, tonight, Be ready at 7, no explanation. No details, no please, just an order. She stared at the words for a long moment, biting her lip. A part of her wanted to ignore him, to break free before she sank any deeper. But the deal was made. 3 favors. She had already given him her word. At exactly 7, she found herself standing outside an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city. She spotted Adrian immediately, tall, commanding, dressed in a dark suit that seemed to sharpen every angle of his already sharp features. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He simply stood waiting, as though he had known without doubt that she would come. "You're late," he said when she reached him. "I'm 2 minutes early," she replied, lifting her chin. His lips curved faintly, but his eyes betrayed nothing. Early is on time is late. Late is unacceptable. She rolled her eyes. "And here I thought I was meeting a man for dinner, not reporting to a drill sergeant." Adrian's smirk deepened, a flicker of amusement softening his otherwise impenetrable demeanor. "You'll find I have high standards, Janet, especially when it comes to the company I keep." He held the door open for her, and she walked inside, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The restaurant was intimate yet elegant, a place where privacy was valued more than publicity. As they were shown to a secluded table, Janet leaned closer, lowering her voice. "So this is my second favor, dinner." Adrian took his seat opposite her, his gaze steady. "Not quite. Tonight you're not here as yourself. You're here as my partner." Her brows knit. "Partner?" "Business meeting," he explained casually, as though this were the most natural thing in the world. "I need someone to play the part. Intelligent, poised, confident, you fit the bill." She nearly choked on the water she had just sipped. "Excuse me? You want me to pretend to be your business partner?" "Correct." He leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "And before you argue, remember you agreed." 3 favors. Janet groaned softly, running a hand over her face. "You're unbelievable." "No," Adrian said, his voice low, deliberate. "I'm strategic." "There's a difference." Before she could fire back, 2 men in tailored suits approached their table, their expressions sharp, assessing. Adrian stood, shook their hands, then gestured toward Janet. "This is Janet Gilbert, my partner," he said smoothly, his voice carrying authority. "She'll be joining us tonight." Janet's heart raced, but she forced herself to smile, extending her hand with practiced confidence. The men regarded her with polite curiosity before settling down. As the conversation unfolded, Janet realized what Adrian had pulled her into, a high-stakes negotiation that could have easily unraveled if she faltered. At first she was terrified. Numbers, contracts, strategies, this wasn't her world. But when one of the men made a dismissive comment about her being decorative rather than functional, something inside her snapped. "I assure you," Janet said, her tone cool and cutting, "I am far from decorative. If you're concerned about function, perhaps we should examine the inefficiencies in your own proposal, before assuming incompetence on someone else's part." The table fell silent. Adrian's eyes glimmered with something unreadable, but there was no missing the curve of satisfaction tugging at his lips. From that moment on, Janet surprised even herself. She found her rhythm, contributing sharp insights, pointing out flaws in logic, and demanding respect without once raising her voice. By the end of the dinner, the men left visibly impressed and slightly unsettled. When they were gone, Janet sagged back in her chair, her heart pounding. "I can't believe you put me through that," she muttered. Adrian regarded her quietly for a long moment, his gaze softer now. "You were extraordinary." Heat rushed to her cheeks. She looked away quickly, trying to mask the way his words affected her. "Don't patronize me." "I'm not," his voice was steady, sincere. "I wanted to see what you'd do under pressure. And you didn't just survive, you owned the room." Janet swallowed hard, torn between pride and unease. She wanted to hate him for using her, for throwing her into the fire without warning. But she couldn't ignore the truth. She had felt alive in there, sharper, stronger, more capable than she had in months. Marcus had left her feeling small, discarded. Adrian, in his twisted way, had forced her to remember who she really was. They left the restaurant and stepped into the quiet night. For a long moment, they stood in silence beneath the glow of the streetlights. Then Adrian spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Why him, Janet?" She blinked, startled. "What?" Marcus, Adrian said, his gaze fixed on her. Why him? What did he give you that you thought was worth everything? The question cut deep, slicing past her defenses. She wanted to snap back, to shield herself. But the honesty in his tone caught her off guard. She exhaled slowly, her voice trembling when she finally answered. He made me feel safe, she whispered. Like I could be vulnerable without falling apart. Like I was enough. Adrian's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with something she couldn't name. And yet he left you. The words stung, but they were true. Janet looked away, blinking back tears. Yes, he did. Silence stretched between them, heavy with things unspoken. Then, slowly, Adrian reached out, his hand brushing against hers. It was the lightest touch, almost hesitant, and yet it sent a current through her veins. I don't care about safety, he murmured, his voice rougher now. I care about truth. And the truth is, Janet Gilbert, you are more than enough, for any man, for every man. But the one who deserves you won't ever let you go. Her breath hitched, her pulse racing wildly. For a moment, the world seemed to still around them, the night air thick with tension. She wanted to pull away, to remind herself that this was a man who thrived on control, who was using her in ways she still didn't understand. But her body betrayed her, leaning into the warmth of his hand. When his lips brushed against hers, it wasn't the polished charm of a billionaire. It was raw, unguarded, desperate, and Janet, despite every warning screaming in her head, kissed him back. It was fire. It was chaos. It was everything she shouldn't want, but suddenly couldn't resist. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Adrian's eyes burned into hers. Careful, Janet, he whispered, because once you step closer, there's no turning back. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at him, torn between fear and longing. And deep inside, she knew he was right. The morning light streamed through Janet's apartment windows, soft and golden, but she didn't notice. Her mind was still spinning from the events of the previous night, the business meeting, Adrian's challenging favor, and the kiss that lingered like fire in her memory. She hadn't slept properly. Her dreams haunted by flashes of him, his gaze, his touch, the way he made her feel alive, even as he complicated her life beyond reason. Then her phone buzzed. She froze, staring at the screen. Adrian Hart, favor 3, tonight, be ready. Her stomach knotted, a mixture of excitement and dread twisting inside her. 3 favors. This was the last one. The final step in a dangerous game she had willingly entered, a game that had already begun to reshape her heart. At 7 that evening, she found herself outside a secluded mansion, far from the city's chaos. Adrian was waiting, leaning against a sleek black car, the epitome of control and charisma. He didn't smile, he rarely did, but his eyes softened when he saw her. Janet, he said, his voice low and steady. This is it, the last favor. She swallowed hard. And what is it this time? He stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. It's not a favor in the sense you've done before. This one is about trust. I want you to spend the weekend with me. No work, no games, no distractions, just us. I want you to see me, truly, and for me to see you. Her breath caught. You want me to trust you? Yes, his gaze was unwavering, completely, and I want to be trusted. Nothing hidden, nothing withheld, no fears, just honesty and connection. Janet's heart raced. Trust was something she had guarded fiercely since Marcus betrayed her. She wanted to run, to walk away before she gave herself entirely to a man who had already complicated her life in ways she didn't understand. But deep inside, she knew that if she didn't take this step, she would always wonder what might have been. Fine, she said softly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. I'll do it. Adrian's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile, and for the first time, she saw a vulnerability there, hidden beneath the mask of power and control. The weekend was unlike anything Janet had experienced. Adrian's mansion was isolated, luxurious yet warm, filled with spaces that invited conversation and connection rather than opulence alone. They cooked meals together in the expansive kitchen, shared wine on the terrace under the stars, and for the first time, talked about their pasts without pretense. Adrian spoke of his childhood, the pressures of wealth, and the betrayals that had shaped him into the man he was. He confessed that trust was a luxury he rarely allowed himself, that most people saw him as ruthless because they never looked past the surface. Janet listened, heart softening, realizing that the man who had so carefully controlled every favor, every move, was also someone who feared love as much as she did. And yet, in his presence, she felt seen, not as a desperate woman chasing a lost love, but as Janet Gilbert, strong, brilliant and worthy of affection. One evening, as they watched the sun set from the terrace, Adrian reached for her hand. "Janet, I didn't ask for your favors because I wanted them. I asked because I wanted you. Every favor, every challenge, was just a way to be close to you, to make sure you couldn't slip away before I could tell you the truth." Her chest tightened. "And what truth is that?" "That I love you," he said simply, his voice unguarded, raw. "I've wanted you since the moment I saw you at that wedding venue. Angry and drenched in rain. I don't want favors. I don't want games. I want you, only you." Tears pricked at Janet's eyes, not from sorrow but from the depth of emotion she felt. "Adrian, He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Shh, don't speak. Just feel, let me show you." And in that moment, with the stars above and the world quiet around them, they fell into each other. There were no reservations, no calculations, only the heat of shared vulnerability, the rush of long-suppressed desire, and the comfort of finally finding someone who matched the depth of their own heart. By Sunday afternoon, Janet knew two things. She no longer wanted Marcus, and she no longer feared opening her heart to Adrian. She had arranged a final meeting with Marcus, needing closure once and for all. When she saw him, all the hurt, anger, and betrayal she had carried for weeks came flooding back. But standing there, fully herself, she realized that the man who had once held her dreams in his hands no longer mattered. "I forgive you," she said softly, her voice steady. Marcus looked at her stunned. "I forgive you for breaking my heart, for leaving me, for everything. But I'm done grieving. My life isn't yours to control anymore." He swallowed hard, words failing him. She turned away, walking toward the waiting car. Adrian was there, his hand extended, his gaze steady and patient. Without hesitation, she took it, feeling the weight of the past lift as they drove away together. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of passion, trust-building, and the slow but steady weaving of their lives together. Janet discovered that love with Adrian wasn't just about heat and desire. It was about support, honesty, and the willingness to grow together. Adrian, in turn, realized that Janet's heart was not fragile, that her strength and courage complemented his own, and that the love they shared was not something to be feared, but cherished. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park near the city, Adrian stopped, turning to face her. His hand took hers, fingers lacing effortlessly. "Janet Gilbert, will you give me forever? Will you be mine, not as a favor, not as a challenge, but as the woman I love?" Her eyes shimmered with tears, the kind that spoke of healing, of trust rebuilt, of a heart finally whole. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of certainty. "Yes, Adrian, I will." He pulled her close, their foreheads touching, breathing mingling, hearts beating in perfect sync. The city's lights shimmered around them, but all that mattered was the love that had been forged in fire, trust and undeniable chemistry. And in that moment, Janet realized something she had never believed before. Happily ever after wasn't a fairy tale. It was this: two hearts, wounded but brave, choosing each other every day, despite everything. Adrian smiled, resting his lips against hers one last time that night. "I promised Janet no favors, just us, always." And for the first time in a long while, Janet believed him. She believed in love again. She believed in herself again. And she believed that sometimes the heart had to break before it could truly be whole. They walked hand in hand, the city glowing around them, a testament to second chances, forgiveness, and a love that refused to be ordinary, a love that was theirs forever. To my wonderful family here on this channel, thank you from the bottom of my heart for embracing this story with your time, your emotions, and your love. Every comment, every like, and every moment you spend listening reminds me why I share these tales. Because together, we are more than an audience. We are a family bound by stories of hope, love, and second chances. This journey wouldn't be possible without you. And I dedicate this story to each of you who continues to believe in love with me. With love and gratitude, Vintage Mike Tales.